Hi, I'm Greg Dell, joined by attorney Frank Darras. And Frank, we want to talk about California disability insurance claims. Now, we litigate these claims and help claimants all over the country, but you've spent a big majority of your career working exclusively in California as your main base and have expert knowledge of California disability insurance law, which is somewhat of an anomaly to the rest of the country. I don't know if I call it anomaly, but it has nuances that are very different, because I know when I litigate in many other states, I often wish sometimes I had some of the California language. So I think it's very pro language for a claimant that we'll get into. But let's go through some of the things that are different that come to your mind about California disability insurance law that a claimant should be aware of when considering a disability insurance claim or on claim and they've been denied.
California's been special. Special because we have a different general definition of total disability than any other state in the country. Our definition in California, from case law that's evolved since Egan versus Mutual of Omaha, which, by the way, created the tort of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. So first and foremost, my law firm is, and my senior partner was the creator of the tort of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing in a famous case called Egan versus Mutual of Omaha. And the case law evolved after that. So, total disability first. The important material or substantial duties that you perform in your occupation with reasonable continuity and the usual and customary way. So important, reasonable continuity. What if I can operate only 3 days a week? But before I became disabled or before I had restrictions and limitations, I could operate all 5 days a week. Or the chiropractor who can only manipulate and adjust on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He can get care, he can get treatment, she can get care, get treatment, but they don't have the continuity, the reasonable continuity of what they did before. So we get to look at the occupation, we get to look at their work, and we get to look at reasonable continuity. Usual and customary way.
Wait, I want to back you up 1 second.
Sure.
Because you do it all the time. Other people watching this are like, what is he talking about, reasonable continuity? Because I want to dumb it down even to somebody who has a desk job.
Okay.
Where does that reasonable continuity come in where it could benefit them in making their claim, especially the person who's sitting there going, wow, I'm really struggling at work. They want me here at my desk 8 hours a day. Where does reasonable continuity come in for them?
Such a good clarification, because all that work is so important, and a lot of people have to sit. They've got to sit at their computer all day long. Even if they take breaks, they say, well, gee whiz, I could sit for 45 minutes. I can take a break where I stand and stretch and what have you for 5 minutes, and then I sit back down. But now my pain is increasing. My severity of my problems is increasing. My focus and concentration is diminishing. Why? Because I can't do my work with the same reasonable continuity as I did before. I used to be able to sit all day. Now I can't sit all day. Stand. I used to be able to stand all day if I'm a dentist. Can't stand. Used to be able to manipulate all day if I was a chiropractor or a physician. For my construction workers and my truck drivers, I used to be able to drive all day. I can't drive as much now because I either have medication that causes me to have to stop and go to the bathroom, or I can't sit. The pain medication makes me loopy. Reasonable continuity, very, very important in California.
And Frank, a lot of the disability companies, they say, you know what, we don't really care about your occupational duties, but we just think you have a sedentary job. And in the national economy, that means that you could sit for 6 out of 8 hours of the day. Potential contacts you or your hand on a claim, and the person goes, you know, I can only really sit for 3 to 4 hours a day, not 6 to 8. And if I do go into a 6 to 8 hour day, I got to take a nap for an hour. Is that reasonable continuity if they're able to do 4 hours a day, but the job requires 6 hours a day?
I love it when the carrier misclassifies the duties, because if they gloss over reasonable continuity and say, well, it's a national standard. No, it isn't. You paid a rich premium for an individual policy that tests what you did, Greg, at the onset. If you can only sit for 4 hours, you're disabled. Doesn't matter whether everybody else on the planet could do it for 6 hours. I give the example of a watch. let's get on top of the Empire State Building. You and I chuck our watches off the Empire State Building. I'm going to be pretty mad if yours works and mine doesn't. It doesn't matter about what the rest of the world or what all these occupations say you can do. It's your limitations. It's your medication. It's your care and treatment. If you can't do it, there's no continuity to it. Plus, you get the bonus of usual and customary.
Okay, so talk about usual and customary.
Love usual and customary, especially for the professionals. You're a dentist. You stand up to do dentistry. Think about last time you were at the dentist. Is your dentist a stand-up dentist or a sit-down dentist? If I'm a stand-up dentist, they can't make me sit down. Why? Because that's not usual and customary. They make that mistake all the time. It's a wrongful, unreasonable claim decision that has serious consequences in California.
Is it usual and customary to the way in which that dentist is doing their practice, or is it usual and customary to the way the majority of the population is practicing
Sure,
dentistry?
they want to say national economy. Most dentists stand up, or most dentists alternate sit-stand. If you alternate sit-stand and the pressure, the pain, the problem gets greater, that's not usual and customary for you. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world is doing or what the demands are in the dictionary of occupational titles or what Social Security says. You paid a rich premium, Greg. Get what your policy offers.
Usual and customary, again, does that come in for, say, there's a manager in some type of business and the disability company evaluates it and goes, that's a desk job. But this particular manager goes, but they make me travel 2 to 3 times a week and I'm on the road and I got to see customers and I got to check in on stores or whatever it may be. I'm not at my desk all day. Does usual and customary help that claimant?
That claimant should win that claim based on usual and customary. You have to travel. They eliminate travel because they say it's usually a desk job. Surveyor. They say, oh, well, you could put a camera out there and take a look. No, you got to go out there. You got to climb. Estimators, all kinds of day-to-day requirements of an occupation that are yours, specific to you. Do you bend, lift, stoop, push, pull, carry? Those things in your work, then we're going to test your occupation in the usual and customary way you do that. How much sitting, how much standing, how much carrying? All those things make California a very, very favorable state for claimants.
Frank, how do you reconcile in California the definitions of occupation which say how your occupation is performed in the national economy for a California resident with the reasonable and constant continuity and usual and custom way of working under California law? Which one governs in that situation?
It's rightful that that was a mouthful because it's clear as mud as to how we pick the salt out of the pepper in that circumstance. California has for individual policies usual and customary, reasonable continuity. On the group side for California is also favorable. We still look at reasonable continuity, we still look at usual and customary, and we've got to drive that point home in a denial or an appeal, or if we're filing a group ERISA claim in federal court because it's a federal law. We've got to clarify, amplify for the judge and put it in Stevie Wonder pica so that there's no question about them understanding usual and customary, reasonable continuity applies to group as well as individual.
So a group employer-provided disability policy cannot conflict with state law, or should not conflict with state law.
It's the should not that requires our attention. And by the way, if you have an individual policy, 2 things that California does that is very difficult in other states. In California, if they wrongfully or unreasonably deny your claim, we can accelerate the contract benefits. Say you're 40 years young, get $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. They wrongfully or unreasonably deny your claim. We can look at the end of the policy period and say, Greg, you shouldn't have to wait every month to see whether they're going to do again what created the wrongfulness or the unreasonableness. We're going to accelerate the whole contract. So from 40 to 65, we're going to give you 25 years times $10,000 a month because they unreasonably and wrongfully denied.
That's fantastic.
That's the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. And for me to have worked alongside the creator of the tort also gives us in California punitive damages and punishment damages. And here's what I say to people to explain it. If you and I rob a bank and we take that money and for 10 years we get to use that money, and after the 10th year we bring the money back to the bank and say, here's your money back. Should there be a consequence? You're darn right there should be a consequence. The same thing if you paid rich premiums for a policy. They wrongfully deny your benefits. Just because you pay me now, I'd hire a lawyer. I may have gotten emotionally distressed over it. I look like an idiot to my family. I took our family money. I paid premiums for a policy that was supposed to give me peace of mind and security. Instead of interpreting the contract right, tried to cheat me because I was disabled and impaired. That's wrong. And boy, oh boy, in California, we get emotional distress. We get consequential damages, Greg. So if I lose my house, my credit rating gets stained. I get to put those damages on the board. In addition to the contract, we're going to accelerate it to the end of the policy period. We're going to get emotional distress. We're going to get my attorney fees. Brace yourself. We've done more of these cases than anybody in the country. We've got the largest monthly, hourly attorney fee than any law firm in the country. And we know how to try punitive damage cases. So in California, insurance companies that sell individual policies should know better. And when they don't, they get punished.
Well, it's a fantastic, and I love hearing about the California laws, because having handled thousands of cases all over the country, there's nobody who has that.
No.
I can't think of another state that has that, and many states are going the other way. They're going pro-insurance company, and they're leaving the claimants hanging. They're leaving them with no teeth.
And it's one of the things that having a national and international practice, because we help, entertainers and athletes from all over the world, and certainly here in the United States, we litigate across all 50 states. One of the things that I trot out in every one of these individual cases in a state where they don't have it is that we're going to bring it. You picked the wrong law firm, you picked the wrong claimant, and we're going to create that law in Arizona, in Maine, in Massachusetts. We trot that out as one of the things that this carrier better pay attention to.
Yeah, and it's a shame really that it doesn't exist everywhere, because you got these multi-billion-dollar companies going against the little person. I mean, every claim's little when you're talking about billions, and you sweat the person out for years, and then at the end of the day, if you prove them wrong, some states don't even provide for attorney's fees,
No.
let alone punitive damages, let alone your compensatory damages, your out-of-pockets. And so at the end of the day, you get your benefits and you get some interest awarded by the court tied to whatever the treasury bond rate, which now it's okay, but for years it was down at zero. And so it was a real, just completely unfair for claimants.
And certainly we're leveling the playing field across the country and internationally too with our athletes that we're doing. I always say they try and beat them up, they try and wear them down, and they try and starve them out until the insured has to give up, because they either don't have the wherewithal, they haven't found the right counsel. And remember, there's law firms around the country, aside from ourselves, that do these cases on contingency,
Right.
where we put up the time, we put up the money to be able to make sure that the claimant gets rich justice, not something, bottom drawer.
Right.
They deserve the best. They paid a premium, they either got it at work or they bought it themselves. Let a great law firm help you get your money.
These California cases are tremendous. There's a lot of opportunity for a claimant, a lot of hope in what you can recover, and if you've been wronged, you can be compensated appropriately, especially on the individual ones. The group employer-provided policies, not as much, because they're governed by ERISA federal laws, which we're happy to discuss with anybody when they call us. But what I always tell claimants is, no matter where you live in the country, and especially if you're someone who's in California, call us. We're going to provide you with an immediate free phone consultation. We're going to review your policy no matter what stage you're at, if you're considering applying, if you've been denied, if you're on claim, and we're going to let you know immediately how we can assist you. And always it's going to be a free call when you speak to us. So thank you, Frank, for being with us here today, and I look forward to helping tons of people as you have for many years.
Our pleasure.